congressional reporter with transport topics. Welcome to Live on Web. Today we're here to examine concerns about driver recruitment and retention across the trucking industry. Our sponsors for today's program are EBE Technologies and Conversion Interactive Agency. You can read more about our sponsors at the bottom of this article page. During the show, we welcome your questions and feedback. You can email us at share@ttnews.com or you can comment directly on this article page. Segments of the industry have faced a shortage of drivers for years, and an aging workforce has carriers worried about falling way short over the next decade. That is, according to a recent report by the American Transportation Research Institute, or ATRI. Many analysts agree the driver shortage affects carriers' ability to keep up with increasing demand for freight hauling service. In a 2015 report, American Trucking Associations, ATA, determined that the shortage of drivers industry-wide is projected to increase to 175,000 in 8 years. Today we'll discuss the latest trends in recruitment efforts and examine strategies for retaining drivers once they sign up with a carrier. Joining me in the studio are Dave Manning, President of TCW Inc. and Second Vice Chairman at American Trucking Associations. Dave will offer insight and perspective from the executive side of the trucking business. We also are joined by Henry Bruster, driver with UPS Freight and a member of America's Road Team. Henry will be sharing insight from a driver's point of view. Our program also will feature interviews with experts who were at the 13th Annual Recruitment and Retention Conference in Nashville earlier this month. Dave, you were at that conference, and you spoke about ATA's image and setting forth the message of trucking nationwide. And you talk to executives all the time. Could you tell us, how big of a problem we're talking about? What is the scope of recruitment and retention, across the industry?
Sure, I'd be glad to, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today as well. And you summed it up some in the introduction, is that, we believe that there's somewhere 48 to 50,000 drivers that we're short today to meet the need in our industry, and that'll continue to grow over the next 8 years to somewhere around 175,000. Gone are the days where you have a stack of applications that you just pull from if and when you need a driver. Most everybody is in the process of continually recruiting drivers today, and it's true for our company as well as for others. I think that there's some fundamentals underlying the driver shortage that aren't going to get better in the near term. When you look at the annual need is somewhere around 90,000 drivers a year that are needed in our industry. But if you break that 90,000 down, only about a third of that is due to growth. 2/3 of that is from retirements and drivers voluntarily or involuntarily leaving our industry, which is of a large concern. Certainly, drivers are an aging workforce. The average age of drivers are 49 years old versus an industry average of only 42 years old, almost a decade difference in that. Also, just the demographics of the drivers. Women make up 46% of the working population, but only 6% of the driving population. So we're missing out on a large segment of the workforce by not having more women that are engaged in trucking. And then there are also those regulations that have an impact on drivers being able to stay in our industry. If you think about CSA, drivers now have their own personal scores that carriers can access when they're looking at hiring a driver. And so those that have a poor score are getting weeded out and not being hired by carriers. There's also the electronic log rule that's coming up, that I think there'll be some drivers that just decide to stop driving as opposed to adopt that new technology, particularly those that are nearing the retirement age to begin with. And then there's the medical registry that went in place that requires the doctors, certified doctors, do the biannual physicals, and so that's weeded out some. And then there's still the sleep apnea regulation that's on the horizon, that there might again be some drivers that decide to leave our industry as opposed to go through the compliance with the sleep apnea regulations. And then it's just a whole lifestyle change. You know, not everybody is comfortable with the responsibility of an 18-wheeler running down the road. And so there's some limitation to those that are interested in trucking just because of the demands that the industry itself has
and
on
being out there on the road many hours a day.
A lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants to accept that responsibility.
And from the corner office perspective, the executive, you know, colleague, your peers in the industry, what is the mood? Is there truly a sense of urgency or panic, for lack of a better term?
I think there's concern.
Okay.
Because those fundamentals that I mentioned aren't changing anytime soon. And so it really depends on how strong the economy is as to how critical the need is. Right now it's softened a little bit, and so the demand for drivers is not as great. But as soon as the economy starts picking up, we'll all be struggling to find enough drivers to be able to keep up with the business opportunity that exists. The silver lining that I think that exists in all that is the opportunity for us to value the driver a little bit more and to respect the drivers a little bit more because of what they provide to our industry. And I think that's been missing some in the recent past, and I hope that this causes us to look at that and figure out how we can be more efficient with the drivers that we do have. There's a lot of wasted time today that could be eliminated that would actually make our drivers more productive that we currently have in the system.
I think that's a good point. To bring you in, Henry, you've been a driver for 17 years. You're out there all the time. These long hours that I mentioned, you know, you do that. This is your craft. Tell me, you know, what got you, what motivated you to join the industry, and also what are you hearing from, you know, your peers and your colleagues when you go to truck stops and you travel throughout the country?
Well, what got me into trucking was that before I became a truck driver, I was in the United States military. My MOS was 11 Mike, which is mechanized infantry. So I would go report for duty, and there would be days I wouldn't come home, whether it's just training or getting deployed. So I was used to not coming home every day. While I was in the military, I met my wife, Tiffany, and we had one son while I was in the military.
Okay.
So towards my end of my enlistment, I messed my knee up. I tore 3 ligaments in my knee, and I had to get reclassified. I had to leave infantry or become a cook. I didn't want to become a cook.
Okay.
You know, I just didn't. I was infantry. I always wanted to be an infantry.
I understand, yeah.
I was going to get out. So I started A-capping, and while A-capping, I saw a letter saying, learn to be a truck driver.
And this is while you were in the military?
While I was in the military.
Okay.
When you get ready to get out, when you're A-cap, that's when you get out. And I thought to myself, I can do that. I can be a truck driver. I don't have to worry about someone looking over my back all day because if you tell me to do something, I can do it. You know, that's one thing about the military. If you tell someone that's in the military to show up at a certain period of time, they're going to do it. So I said, you know what, I can do that. I can start driving trucks. So that's what I did. I thought that it would be a great way to provide for my family, had great benefits, and just being out on an open road. I love what I do. I love going out and meeting different people, going to different parts of the country.
Yeah. And when you are doing that, when you're going to different parts of the country, what do you hear from other drivers, and also when you talk to them about their interests, and some of them I'm sure are telling you, hey, I'm looking to get out, you know, what is it that they're telling you? Can you give us an insight on those conversations?
Well, like I said, I work for UPS Freight, and I work for a local company. I have a turn and meet. So a lot of the over-the-road drivers always ask me, like, are you guys hiring? Because they don't want to stay out as long. They want to come home every day.
Okay.
And the first thing I ask them, are they putting in the application, or how are they, do they have certain endorsement? For the work for certain company, you need certain endorsement. You need triple-double. You need hazmat, and you have to pass certain background check. You know, like to go to different ports, you might need a TWIC card.
Yeah.
That's the work identification card. So that's some of the questions they ask. And another thing that people find that they just fed up. They sit there and think to themselves like, I'm not getting paid while I'm broke down. Do you guys get paid while you broke down? When you're on vacation, what's your vacation pay? What's your benefit package? That's some of the questions that I'm always asked.
So And do you get the sense that those concerns, they're the catalyst as to why they will leave the industry?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of them.
You know, that's a good segue to one of the first question that I want to get into, and this comes from Mike Gilbert. He's with Telogius, and he asked the panel, tell me the reasons why choosing to become a professional driver in today's world should be considered to be my dream job, in quotes. Why? How can you tell somebody, hey, being a professional driver this could be your dream job? How do you do that?
Some people don't want to be confined to an office. You know, when you driving trucks, your steering wheel and your seat, that's your office, and your view constantly changes. And like I say, you get to go out there and you get to see this whole great nation that we're in, that we live in, called America. It's like a free vacation. You get to go from point A to point B. So I like that. And another thing is, like we already said, we're talking about a driver shortage. So long you remain safe, you're a safe driver, you keep a safe record, you can always find a job. And I have a lot of friends that have college degrees that may be engineers or working in plants or working in oil fields that, you know, you're always constantly getting laid off, or the plant closes down, they open back up under a new name. So they go to work and they don't very have good jobs securement. So if you drive trucks, you have a CDL, you can pretty much find a job as long as you remain safe.
Dream job, when I was in college, you know, my dream job was to be a reporter, and I met with an advisor, and, you know, we made it happen. How do you tell these kids, hey, this could be your dream job?
Yeah, well, Henry makes some great points. I think the independence piece of it is important, but I also think there's a tremendous earning potential right off the bat for that most other industries don't allow for that same, particularly that early. It takes years to work up to what a driver can make in their first year. So I think a piece of it is the great earning potential that exists, and then I think also that it's a part of the image campaign, but it's taking pride in what we do and realizing how essential the truck driving job is to getting goods delivered for us. So there's, you know, if we can get people to take pride in the fact that they really are delivering what's essential to America, then it adds some added value to what they're providing.
And to put it in context, we're talking about 80% of America's freight moves via trucks.
That's exactly right, and a lot of communities depend exclusively on truck for their delivery. So I think it's kind of taking a bigger picture look at it to make drivers really understand how critical they are to the nation's economy.
Yeah, and to build on that, you know, I'm sure some people don't realize that, especially in severe weather moments, it is the trucks are the ones, the first line of defense to bring in the supplies and the goods to these communities. Yeah,
there's a great Trucking Moves America Forward video that shows trucks heading into the disaster when everybody else is heading out of the disaster.
Exactly.
And it's sort of, there's a lot to be proud of in our industry and what we do, and I think too many times as executives and operations personnel, we forget that what we're doing is really important, and it doesn't always translate to our drivers either. But if they can see the value in that, they can see the pride in that, then it helps temper some of the frustrations that come along with being out on our nation's highways all the time.
That's a good point, and we'll get to more questions. And just a reminder out there that if you're interested in sending us a question or feedback during the show, you can email us at share@ttnews.com, or you can comment directly on the article page. Here's another question that I got. This one's from a gentleman named Burl Tate, and he asks, what keeps a driver with a company? Is there one single thing, or is it a combination of several things that this is more on the retention side that keeps them, you know, here focused and engaged in their company?
That's a real good question. I can tell you right off the bat, it's a combination.
Okay.
But I can tell you pay is great. It's great to have a nice paycheck, but I think the number one thing is respect. Drivers want respect. I don't care what profession you work in. When you go to work and you feel like your boss have your back and he have your general concern on his top priority, guess what? You'll run through a wall for that person. You'll do whatever it takes. So if your boss treats you with respect, you're willing to go the extra mile. You're willing to take the extra step. So pay is good, but we have to remember that you have to treat your drivers with respect.
What about you? Is there one single thing, or is it an all of the above?
There's no silver bullet. You know, I would
Okay.
agree that it's a combination of things. And I mean, trucking is a people business.
Yeah.
And you got to remember the drivers are people too. And you got to treat them like you would want to be treated. And sometimes we tend to get focused on getting the freight delivered to the customer when and where and how they need it, and you forget that there's a human being that's involved in the process of that. So I think the respect piece, personalizing it, making sure that you recognize that individual. And I think it's also being sure that you hire the right person for the job. Not everybody is geared, it's a diverse industry.
Yeah.
And not everybody is geared for your particular segment. And so you need to do a good job in the interview process of making sure that the person that you're hiring is a good fit for your particular segment, understands the hours, understands the conditions, and you start from sort of a level of trust in the beginning, and you deliver on what you tell them they're going to be able to expect with your company.
And it just sounds so obvious that for management to be respectful of their workforce, that would be a motivating factor for the employee to keep coming back. Any thought as to why? I guess it's easier said than done. Is it that some managers are just swamped, busy, and I guess one will have to allocate time to engage with the drivers, with the team? Is that?
I think so much of it is you deal with them either by phone or even today computers, right?
Okay.
It becomes a little bit impersonal. Everybody has an employee number that is sort of what you're recording in the system, and there's a lot of pressure. Customers are pretty demanding in what they expect, and so when there's a failure, when we're not delivering up to the customer's expectations, there's a lot of pressure, and I think we just forget sometimes that the driver is a person too, and we're all working together to try to accomplish the same thing for our customer, and the driver has to keep that in their mind, and I think our operations personnel have to keep that in their mind as well.
Henry, and to build on what you said, the respect, when you go out there and you talk to other drivers from other firms, is that what they bring up, that this lack of respect from back in the workforce, but back in their office?
Yes, it's not so much as from the office. I think the drivers are concerned about that. They tend to think, well, my boss, he never been in a truck. He never drove a truck.
Yeah.
He don't know what I'm going through.
He don't get it.
He don't get it. He don't understand that I can't go. Yesterday, where it wasn't rush hour traffic, I can go over here in 5 minutes, but today it's 20 minutes. I'm stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
Or I can't go around this construction area because, there's traffic down the one lane. I'm getting delayed, or it's just the weather condition, the wind is high. I can't go any further. It's unsafe. I can feel the trailer rocking backwards and forth. And so, like, when the boss come down, like, well, you should be over this. What's taking you so long? And they say, wait a minute, I'm trying to do this safe. You're telling me to be safe, and I'm trying to be safe, but either you want me to deliver or you want me to be safe. Well, you know what? It's our responsibility to be safe. That's our number one priority, to be safe at all times. And I think that's the problem, where you're in the office, you're not in the real world, actually seeing what's going on. Like Dave said, most of the time they talk on the computer. Where your dispatcher, depending on where your company is located at, they can be out of Richmond, and I can be in Baton Rouge, and they telling me, well, you need to go here. And I see that the road is clear. I'm like, well, I don't know what you see, but the road is blocked. So I can't go any further. Now, what you want me to do? I'm sorry, But the main thing is, what you have to do. Once you get to the customer, it's about the driver. It's how you present yourself. When I get to the customer, if I'm a little bit late, it's like, same thing like if you want respect, you have to give other people respect.
Exactly.
So you give the customer respect, you explain what happened, and also you explain to your boss what happened. You let your boss know, just don't be so inconsiderate and realize that it is your boss, and give them the respect that you deserve. And I think that's the way of the world. If you treat people with respect, they respect you as well.
And yes.
Well, Henry mentions the customer aspect of it, because I think it's important that our customers respect our drivers as well, and that just doesn't happen all the time. If you look at the facilities, restroom facilities that they make available to them, or the rules that they have for drivers while they're loading and unloading, they don't treat them with the same respect that they do their own employees that are working for them.
And they get discouraged, and
well,
they hear their buddies at another job.
It's that poor. Everybody deserves to be treated with respect, particularly, that's what I'm saying. I hope through this short is that our drivers gain the respect of our customers as well as our managers, because trucks don't move without the driver behind the wheel.
Exactly. And when I was at the conference in Nashville, the recruitment conference, we touched on, I spoke with Rob Hatchett, Vice President of Recruiting at Covenant Transport, and they're based in Tennessee. And we talked about this issue, about how you have to create an honest and strong communication environment over and back in your workplace. And I believe we have a video of my conversation with Rob Hatchett.
But it is so important to set expectations up front.
Yeah.
And that's something that we recruiters sometimes get the reputation of just say what you need to say to get them here. And that's not our focus. Our focus is tell them what it's like here. And so for Covenant, when I think about our strategy, there's several things that we ask up front. Are you willing to run OTR? That's what we do. Everybody that comes in is running OTR. So we're not trying to tell them, oh, I got a dedicated lane for you, or I've got some type of engineered lane. It's you're going to be running OTR. So if you set that expectation up front, that's what's known. Number two, are you willing to be on a team? Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And so if someone comes in thinking I'm a solo, that's not what we do at Covenant. We team people up, and we bring in teams. And so automatically, if I've set the expectation, you're running OTR, and you're going to be part of a team, then they walk in the door and it meets their expectation. Also, we're out for 12 days, and then we're home for a couple days. Are you okay with that? If we set that expectation up front,
Exactly.
People walk in and they get what they expect. And that's so cliche, but so often we don't do a good job of that in this world. We sell something that's really not what we're selling. So I think that's very important for recruiting, and then also for the retention side. Because if they can come in and say, you told me this and you did this, and I'm okay, I'm happy. And so I think that's very, very important. So I think knowing who you are, and we know who we are in terms of we're a team model, running OTR, that's what we do, and that helps us sell properly, and that is setting the right expectation.
And thank you, Rob Hatchett at Covenant. And again, a reminder that we welcome your questions and feedback. Please email us at share@ttnews.com, or you can comment directly on this article page. And before, I want to segue to young drivers, but we got a question from Michael Dorr. He's CFO at Diversified Transfer and Storage. And this is pretty much what we've been talking about. And his question, he wants to know, as a carrier, if we feel we are doing everything right for the driver, pay is great, home time is great, communication lines are open, that's what we talked about, then what are the main reasons a driver leaves one company to go to another? Dave?
Oh, well, that sounds like a good Henry question.
Oh, Henry, go. Yeah.
Wow. I would think, and you say they have great pay and great lines.
That's what Mike, that's his setup for his question. Pay is great, home time is great, communication lines are open. Why would you think the driver will go to another company?
Maybe sometimes the communication not as great as you think.
Okay.
Maybe it's not be as great. Maybe it's some of like what Dave talked about earlier. Maybe it be some of the customers that you deliver into. Sometimes you can go to customers and you get there and all they see is you. And they're like, why are you late? Why is my product damaged? And you sit there and you got to answer these questions. You got to remember that the customer is always right. So even though they might be putting you down or not giving you the respect that you needed, you have to remember that, hey, you're representing the company. So the first thing I would do, I would get with the customer, I would get with my drivers and ask them, like, what's really going on? Another thing is, are you having any kind of like rewards programs? Are you allowing your drivers to become road team captains? Are you allowing them to participate in your state TDCs? Different things. Do you have safety bonuses? Do you have reward programs? It's other things. It's more than just the communication. People like small things. Do you have like parking? Like the driver of the month. This driver did this, so you get to park up front. Do you have like rewards, like safety rewards? Like, okay, look, today this driver, he had 50,000 miles without an accident. Okay, you have barbecues, like at UPS Freight. If we go 60 days without an accident, we can have a barbecue.
Oh, nice.
We have a cookout where this particular last or last week, I did something different. I had a pancake breakfast.
There you go.
So I came in early, I cooked all the drivers' breakfast. We made pancakes, grits, eggs, sausage. My turn around, she wanted turkey bacon. I don't know why she wanted turkey bacon.
Some people are like that.
Yeah, but she said, I want turkey bacon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we'll do turkey bacon. But it went over good. The drivers, you know, you should have seen their face. They're like, free breakfast. What, are you serious?
Yeah.
You should have seen how their face lit up, you know. So they were so excited, and how they was just talking. They was, you know, they was just relating, and we got to talking. That gave me a chance to talk about, you know, I'm also in the wellness champion. And I got to talk to some of them about their health. You know, I got to talk to them about, okay, are you doing any walking? Are you watching your calories? Are you taking the extra time to do a pre-trip? Just small things. And I asked them about, like, okay, what's your 5 seeing habits? You know, we push that. What's your 5 seeing habits? And I go, I know them, and they talk like, I know it. So, like, stuff like that, you'll be amazed. Just small things like that, just giving back to your driver, how much they appreciate that. So maybe you need to look in that, you know, have a few banquets, a few picnics, barbecues, and another thing, get the family involved.
Yep.
I think bringing the spouse to work day, I think that would be great. You know, you can bring the family, and you can bring the kids in, you can bring the wife in, and, you know, walk around the facility to see exactly what the wife, what do my wife, what do my husband do? He come here, I know you have to do a pre-trip. What's a pre-trip? You know, show your wife, like, this is a pre-trip. This is a brake chamber. A brake chamber, okay, and this is a fifth wheel. Why is it a fifth wheel? It's not a wheel. It's things like that.
Exactly.
You'd be amazed.
And then the family feels they have ownership and a stake in, you know, what the spouse does. Anything you like to add?
So I told you he'd give you a great
Yeah.
answer. So that was good. Now, the only
turkey bacon. Get the turkey bacon in there.
Well, and spontaneous, and I think some varieties what I hear from all. And I think the other thing that can also be true is that they weren't a good fit for your segment of the industry.
Okay.
We're an intermodal carrier primarily, and there's a lot of times they've never pulled intermodal equipment before. And so even though we might think we're doing everything right, it's just not a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we got to be really clear on the front end.
This is what you're going to be doing.
Set the expectations
Yeah.
really well so that as much as you can, you eliminate any surprises
Yeah.
once they actually go to work. But I think it's another reason that causes some of that churn is they're just not a good fit for the particular job that you have, whether it's the customer they're delivering to or the equipment that they're pulling or the route that they have, but it's just not a good fit.
Let's segue, and this is a very hot topic within this issue, and it's the whole theme about young drivers. And what I said in the intro, and everybody knows, many drivers are approaching retirement age, and we have a pool of these young drivers, the millennials, the young Generation X that are out there. And studies have shown that they have different communication habits. They're more the Facebook generation. They're more online all the time. Some of them have never heard a dial tone when they, use a telephone. So I want to turn to you, Dave, and they're out there. Many of them are looking for employment. How do you connect with them? How do you reach out to these younger drivers? Tell them, educate them on the industry and get them to join the industry, and perhaps they will realize that, hey, this is my calling, my vocation, and I want to pursue this.
So for old people like me, you have to find somebody that's much younger,
okay,
that understands the social media, and
yeah.
it's a part of the recruiting that we do is on social media with Facebook and Twitter and those things that some of us don't understand completely about. Also, the whole internet, the web advertising that takes place. We have some companies that manage that for us. But I would take even a different twist on the whole younger driver thing and saying that we need to be able to recruit drivers out of high school. So this whole graduated CDL for 18 to 20-year-olds is critically important. 18 to 20-year-olds can already drive intrastate within all 40 contiguous states in the U.S., so it's not something that's new. It's just they can't cross state lines. But it's important for us to be able to use 18 to 20-year-olds, and not everyone, but those that would be a good fit for our industry, to cross interstate lines, state lines for us, and drive in interstate commerce, because today you have to depend on a second career. You know, they've already done, if they don't go to college, they've already done something else, and you got to catch them, you know, on a rebound. I'd rather be able to be in high schools recruiting that as a career straight out of high school, instead of trying to recruit them to trucking once they've already chosen another career opportunity. I mean, if we can send people off in the military to fight for us at 18 to 20-year-olds,
Yeah, of course.
we ought to be able to train them to be able to drive a tractor trailer responsibly for us. So I think that's a piece of it.
Is it when they're at the and when you go to the if we really go after the high schoolers, what would be a challenge? Would it be an image thing, just really educating them that perhaps they'll know more about certain other trades like plumbing, you know, carpentry, and not really well versed on trucking? Well, what is the challenge? The communication.
Yeah.
Once you connect with them, how do you really expose them to the?
Part of it's the image.
Okay.
You know, I think what you said in the intro is true. If you get people in a room to raise their hand, not many of them are going to say that they want their children to wind up in transportation. So
Yeah.
there's an image issue that we have to address. And I think it goes back to that essentiality, you know, how essential trucking is to our economy, and what the earning opportunities are, and that it's a profession. There's school that has to be attended, but it's like a vocational type school, right? You do that vocational time, but then you've got skills that you can use for the rest of your life that are always going to be in demand. So I think it's really just making them see that as a tremendous career opportunity, and convincing them to seek that career opportunity coming out of high school.
Henry, turning to you, you're an ambassador of the trucking industry, America's the campaign. When you talk to other drivers, and I'm sure you come across younger drivers, and when you see guys in their 20s, they ask you what you do, and you think they'll be a good fit. How does those conversations go?
Well, first of all, they want to know how much I get paid.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
All right.
You get paid. How often do you come home? What type of vehicle you drive? Do you get to bring your family with you?
Okay.
Can you bring an animal with you? Can you take a vacation? What's the stuff? Believe it or not, I have a lot of questions about stock options. Can you buy stock options? And is there different programs that I can go to for my health reason, or for just like if I get in trouble with the law, anything like it'd be different. Like suppose if they asked me, like, suppose if you wasn't college material.
Yeah.
You didn't make the best grades.
Yeah.
You didn't make the best grades when you were in school, and you don't see yourself going to college. And now I'm 19 and I have a family. I made a mistake, a younger person, with a child.
It happens.
And, and I want a job, and I see that I can drive trucks, but I gotta wait until I'm 21. Well, I can't wait until I'm 21.
Yeah.
I had to take care of my family now. And most people become creature of habits. Once they're used to doing one thing, that's all they want to do. You can look along the lines, once people get hooked on saying, okay, I'm working as a security guard.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, if they lose that job, they go find another security job.
This is what they learned. This is what they're comfortable doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Compared if you was to go get an 18-year-old, and not, like I say, not all 18-year-olds are the same. You have some responsible, you have some that are not responsible.
Yeah. So
you have to know that person. You have to bring that person in and give them the training and give them the guidelines. I think if you bring an 18-year-old and you put them with a trainer, they can drive across state. Why they can't drive across the state line? Put them with a trainer. You let the trainer observe them. Observe them for a couple of months, or you want to observe them for 6 months, and do so. And give them a shot, because, like I say, tomorrow, like we keep on saying that our kids are our future.
Yeah.
But somehow, somewhere down the line, that we think, like Dave pointed out earlier, 18 years old, I was in Kuwait driving a truck. I was in a different country driving a truck.
Yeah.
Driving ammo, troops, mail, water,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
go here, go there.
Yeah.
And I can't drive from Texas, Louisiana,
Yeah.
because I'm 18 years old. That's
Exactly.
a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And I know that's something ATA has been working with lawmakers to address, and there's some reception. Some lawmakers are receptive to that, but in the latest highway bill, lawmakers missed that mark. They just
They restricted it to veterans only. And so we want to continue to work on removing that restriction. One of the other things that I would add to what Henry was saying also is that I think that the safety technology that is developed on trucks makes me more comfortable in putting a driver behind the wheel. We're one of those companies that requires 2 years safe driving record before we'll hire somebody. Well, that's just to prove that they haven't had a number of accidents, that they're able to handle a vehicle. With the technology that's on the trucks today, you can tell minute by minute, hour by hour, how safely somebody's operating a vehicle.
Exactly.
You can use it for coaching, but you also can find that person that doesn't need to be in the truck and get them out before they have a wreck. Previously, you just knew whether they were having accidents or not.
That's a good point. And I just want to again remind everybody, if you're interested in sending us a question or feedback, please do so at share@ttnews.com. And we do have a question here from Todd Hensley. He's with Driver IQ, and he's actually asking, still on these younger drivers, and I'm just going to read it, will less overnight travel make an impact to bring new young drivers into the industry? And he goes on, if so, how could it be feasibly implemented for the larger truckload carriers? So the whole question about giving less overnight work.
Oh man, I have a great answer for that. I gave a lot of thought about this question.
Alrighty.
Like I said, I work for an LTL company.
Yeah.
And basically you're moving from point A to point B. But large truckload company can basically do the same thing along the interstate system. They have 10, 12, 65, 55. And they move from city to city. So the truckload company have to get smart. If you have freight that have to move from, let's say, from Atlanta to Houston, you need to figure out what's the midway point. Okay, my driver can drive 500 miles, 600 miles a day in turn. So particularly take 5 hours. So okay, he can drive 5 hours that way and 5 hours back. So you have a meet point. You get 2 drivers and you have a meet point. And that driver drive 5 hours, that driver drive 5 hours, and you go to a drop yard. You drop trailers. You might have trailer freight that they can bring to Atlanta, can continue going north. So you swap the trailers out, the truckload company, he bring that trailer back to Atlanta, that driver continue with that trailer going back towards Houston. Now, this way it gets interesting. We always talking about younger drivers. It's about intrust-free drivers. This way the 18-year-old and the 21-year-old, you want to follow that. All right, so most of those guys are in college, okay, and they're looking for a great part-time job. How about when you drop that into that particular city, it's a drop yard, you have a day cab. Okay, at that point, those drivers that can't drive out of state, they can deliver those in those smaller cities or around the city because they're not leaving the state, and also it's like a part-time job for them. So, but then here go the thing about it. Here's the kicker. Suppose they finish school.
Yeah.
And their career don't work out. So now they've been driving for like 2 or 3 years, and they say, you know what? I actually like what I do. I think I'm gonna go ahead and being part-time and become full-time. So that way you can get in touch with younger drivers.
That's right.
So now you got your problem. You have your meet and turn, your drivers going back home, and you also can use your younger drivers for the deliver around the city.
Exactly. That's a great point.
It's a great point. I think it happens some today. I think that long haul, over the road drivers are starting to regionalize their operations some. Within our company, we do that. We move freight from Savannah, Georgia to Nashville with a relay point, and we slip seat our trucks. So we have 2 drivers assigned to the same truck. There's a productivity, better use of the equipment with that. Instead of typically having 1 driver and 1 truck and the truck's not moving when the driver's off, when you can use those short haul operations and get the truck back, you can put another driver in that truck and run the other 12 hours of the day and get a lot better utilization out of the equipment. So I think that that's becoming more, it's not 100%. I think that's also another misunderstanding about our industry, is that every driving job is one that where you have to lay out for weeks at a time. That's just not true today.
Those are great points. And then you also build teamwork that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Back to Facebook, I spoke at the conference in Nashville with Leah Schultz, and she's a social media director at Papa John's International, and we talked about, how social media, especially Facebook and Twitter, really helps connect with the younger demographic, and I want to turn to my interview with Leah.
With a user base of over 1.5 billion users, it's really hard to argue with the depth they have and the penetration they have within the market, as well as the targeting capabilities they have. As you know, when you create your profile, you're uploading all sorts of personal information, everything from your name to where you work, your political affiliation, your religion, your interests, movies you like, all of that. And Facebook's done a really great job at creating these social context around who the users are and developing different ways to target based on behavioral interests and activities, and of course the conversations that we're having on social. So by the people that you connect with, that creates kind of your social network within the framework there, and because of that you're able to target in ways that you never have on other types of media.
And when drivers go on Facebook, what is a good way for the recruiters to attach and connect with them?
Yeah, well, a lot of times they're identifying themselves as a truck driver or working at different carriers. They will often call out who their carrier is. They like the page. They're leaving comments there. They're asking questions as they're looking around for different positions. And I think it first starts with listening from the carrier perspective. So understanding where these drivers are on Facebook and social media, what they're talking about, what their interests are, and how to appeal to them in ways, and being able to do content marketing. So developing blogs, serving them up on Facebook, developing videos, serving them up there, and of course, sharing the different types of media in a way that connect with drivers based on their interests. So maybe that's how-to videos, and all different things from driver recruiting to also retention, because Facebook has become a great place not only for carriers to connect with drivers, but for drivers to connect with other drivers as well.
Thank you, Leah Schultz with Papa John's. And again, a reminder that we're taking your questions and feedback during today's show. Email us at share@ttnews.com. Also, please comment directly on this article page. Guys, let's shift over to what we talked about earlier, wages, money, pay, the paycheck. And Henry, you talked about it. Obviously, this doesn't really need a lot of intro, everybody redundant. You pay people well, they'll keep coming back. This is an argument that's been around. Some economists deliberate on this, the whole issue of compensation and rewards and bonus structures. Dave, I would like to turn to you on this first. How should the industry handle and treat wages? Is pay really the answer here?
It's a piece of it.
Okay.
And I think that what's happened, particularly with the Great Recession that we went through, is that drivers' wages really haven't kept pace with inflation over the last 10 or 15 years, if you look at it. And so we've got to continue to get wages up to keep up with the cost of living increases that are taking place. Obviously, most of the time to get wages up, you've got to also get customers to agree to pay the carrier more money to be able to do that. And that comes and goes with how strong the economy is. At TCW, we did a 14% wage increase in 2014, behind and needed to catch up some. Also, business was really strong during that stretch, and we were able to get rate increases to help us be able to afford that increase. We did 4% again last year on top of that. And so I do believe that as long as the economy continues to grow, wages will continue to go up on drivers. You see carriers announcing wage increases all the time. But I also think that incentive pay is an important piece of that. And we added an incentive component to our compensation to tie pay to productivity. If a driver works 50 hours a week for every week of the quarter, they're eligible for 1% of their wage for that quarter, and also to safety. If they don't have any accidents or injuries and no hours of service violations or moving violations, and we use speed gauge, they have less than 1% speed gauge violations in that quarter, they're eligible for another 1%
You have a
of their
reward structure.
quarterly wage.
Yeah.
So tying it to performance,
Yeah.
but also giving them an opportunity to earn additional income as a piece of that.
Henry, you talked about respect and collegiality in the workforce. But, tell us about, wages. Is that, what do you think?
Yeah, just like Dave said, wages is important, but that's only one part. It's wages and it also benefits. You can be paying your employee high wages, but what does the benefit cost? I done heard companies that the benefits are outrageous. Be paying $200-300 every 2 weeks. I'm happy to say at my job that the wages where the benefits are low. Thank God for the union job. But with that being said, wages is one thing, but it's benefits also. And you also have to look at going back to respect. So all of them all of them go hand in hand. And I'm just thinking about Dave, some of the incentive program they have. I wish we had that.
We got a question from Ricardo Rees, and he's with Western Merchandise Express. He asks, how important is pay versus all other aspects of retention? This is what we talked about, retention, like respect, home time, lanes, equipment, anything we like to add. Just wanted to get to his question.
Well, what I would say is we wrestle with that a lot of times as a management team. When we know we want to spend additional money, what do you want to spend it on? Do we want to spend it on benefits? Do we want to spend it on additional vacation time? And a lot of times, if you ask drivers, it comes back to what that weekly check is going to be. Let them have the money and decide how they want to spend that money instead of us, in our infinite wisdom, trying to figure out how they would like for us to spend it on their behalf. And the only other thing I wanted to say about wages is that it's not just what you pay per mile. There's a lot of unproductive time that drivers wind up spending, and I think that's causes some of the churn sometimes, is what they actually get on a paycheck doesn't match what they thought it was going to be because they can't work enough miles or enough hours during the day or during the week. It's about the compensation, what's on their check that matters, and you've got to be productive in how you use the drivers and make full days for them to be able to maximize their earning ability.
We have another question, and we touched on this. I want to just acknowledge that it's from Allison Kempa. She's with ASL Transportation Group, and she's asking, this is what we've been talking about, besides money and local schedules, what would make a company stand out more than the others to get the right people in the door? Is this going back to the, having those pancake breakfasts and having, family engagement? Is this anything we can build on this?
I would say that for us, it has to do with our image, and with our brand, and when we
you're a good company to work for.
When we look at what brings us the most applicants, most of them have seen our truck, or they've seen our facilities, or they know one of our drivers, or have met. They know something about our company that makes them that makes them want to come apply there. And so we think image and brand, running late model equipment, having nice facilities, having drivers that are in uniforms, being professional about what we do and how we do it is really important in recruiting the right drivers to come to work for us.
Henry, and I know you did talk at length about this. Anything you would like to add? What makes the company stand out?
Great. Dave gave a great answer. That was great, because I was thinking that also about the uniform. Just knowing that who you work for and the company brand, believe it or not, that people identify who you work for. When I get off work, and like, well, Henry worked for UPS, so they say, oh, that's great, but they have other great companies. Company like Dave Company, they have FedEx, they have SAI, they have a whole lot of different. They have 11 members on the America's Road team, work for different companies, and those are some great guys. And I'm always bouncing ideas like, what are some of the things that they're doing? I'm like, man, that's amazing. And they ask me the same thing. So like I say, it's just the trucking image themselves. It's about coming to work and knowing that you're going to get paid and you're going to get the respect. And like you said, the late models equipment. Like recently, I just received one of our sponsors for American Road Team is Volvo.
Yeah.
And I received a new Volvo last week. It's the I-Shift-Matic. And this truck.
Very nice.
Very nice. And it have all the bells and whistles on it. It has the anti-collision litigation system.
Yeah.
It has the lane departure system. It has, like I say, it's one button. You press drive. You have to change any gears and you go. And it takes, you're driving down the highway and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, well, I need to change gear, but the truck is doing itself.
There you go.
The truck is so smart. It knows when you're going up a hill. It knows when you're going down hill. and know if it's wrecked, like if it's need traction control of the truck. And so you're just riding in this modern piece of equipment, like, man, this is amazing. So it's just stuff like that, knowing that you can work for these companies that actually care about these drivers, that, spend extra money and say, you know what, I'm gonna buy the best for my drivers. I'm gonna get this piece of equipment because not only I care about my drivers, but I care about their safety, and I care about the motorist safety.
Yep.
We're all still intrigued with modern technology, right?
Yes.
And we'll get to technology, especially big data, in a second. But I spoke with Tim Norland. He's the director of recruiting at Martin Transport in Nashville. When I was at the conference in Nashville, and he had an interesting take on how his firm, handles compensation packages and how he treats wages. And I believe we have a video. My conversation with Tim Norland.
We've tried to turn the tables a little bit and focus on consistent earnings for our drivers, and in doing so, we focused on that unproductive time that a driver has, dwell time at customer locations, waiting to load and unload. Martin Transport was the first carrier to implement automatic detention pay. Driver doesn't have to do anything to get the pay other than show up on time for their deliveries or pickups. The other thing that we focused on is shutdown pay. Inclement weather. We're in the middle of winter. How many drivers continue to drive in bad weather because they need to pay their car payment or pay their house payment, and the only way they do that is by earning a cents per mile? We incentivize the drivers to do the right thing, be safe, pull over, wait for road conditions to improve, but to make sure their earnings don't suffer, we pay them $20 per hour while they're doing that, so that there's peace of mind. It helps them make the right decision. And we found that by doing those things with the automatic detention pay and with the downtime pay, yes, it costs us money, but in the end, our drivers are safer, they make better decisions, we're more efficient at customer locations, and bottom line, our drivers have consistent earnings week after week after week, regardless of how many miles they drive.
And again, a reminder that we welcome your questions and feedback. Send us your questions at share@ttnews.com. Guys, we're getting tons of questions. Thank you. And one of them is from Craig Sporer, and he asks, what is the perception from a driver standpoint of companies that pay per mile versus by the hour?
Well,
So
I guess
that whole argument there.
Well, I guess it depends on what type of work you're doing.
Okay.
And UPS Freight, if you're running line haul, you particularly get paid by the miles. If you're doing city work, you're getting paid by the hour. But on the same level, if you're getting delayed, you have retention pay. After the 30 minutes, you have to give them 30 minutes because they have a certain meet point. After you get 30 minutes, you start getting paid. If you break down, if you break down, you get paid. The other thing is the only thing about that, like if you get paid by the hour, most of the time you're just doing city work. That's pretty much.
Okay.
But the main thing is this: every job is different.
Yeah.
I can't we have drivers that complain about, well, I don't get paid to do a pre-trip inspection, and UPS argument is that when you get paid and the amount of pay per hour, that's all that's included. So you don't get paid for that. But I think it's really important that people just need to realize that it depends. You can't pay you for hour of pay and you're doing line hour, because sometimes things may arise that they have no control over it.
Anything on the whole mile?
Well, I would say that, piece rate pay is a good way of paying if the opportunity exists for the person to produce.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge in trucking is just what Henry was saying, is all operations are very different. And there can be instances where the driver is delayed or experiences a breakdown or experiences a customer problem delay that's beyond their control. And there has to be some sort of reasonableness in compensating them for that time. So, I'm all for piece rate pay when it's fair for both parties. It's just hard for it to be fair in all instances in trucking. We pay miles and hours both because it's so variable. one of our drivers can have to go into the port or the rail, and it's
Yeah.
going to take them a lot longer to get that piece of equipment to hit the
Exactly,
road
yep.
than it would if they hooked up on our yard and left. So it's so variable that we pay hourly pay for that type of work, and then mileage pay for the miles that they're actually traveling down the highway.
Thank you for that question, Craig. And I briefly want to touch on big data, and this links to wages, how firms out there are relying on databases and just big packages of information to measure driver performance, fuel economy, determining salaries and bonus structures. I'll get to my conversation with Mark Shaver, Vice President of a National Transportation Institute, in a second. But the panel, Dave, how do you view big data? What are its benefits?
Yeah, there's a lot of information that comes out of trucks today, and being able to manage that data is the challenge. But to the extent that you can manage it, it does allow us to measure an individual driver's performance, where previously it was tied more to a truck, and because we put two drivers in the same truck, or our trucks move between terminals over a period of time, it was very difficult to get it to the driver level. So the fact that we're able to manage data much more specifically to driver time specifics enables us to be able to use it for incentive type pay. I think also that there's a lot more effort on the OEM's part to make that data available to the driver in the truck real time, which is a lot more efficient way of educating the driver. I think all that data has to be used to coach with, though, not to be a cop and say I've got you, but to coach on improving behavior. And the more immediate that feedback is to the driver, most people take pride in what they do, and they want to hit the target, they want to hit the goal. And so if the driver can see where they are relative to where they need to be real time, I think you get a lot better performance out of it.
Henry, anything from the driver's perspective? Do drivers, do they talk a lot about this whole big data?
Well, anything that promote efficiency,
Okay.
that's great, because we know that when a company opens its doors, they open the doors to make money. And I figure if they making money, and we're talking about pay, we talking about salaries, the more money that they make, the more pay they can pay to the drivers, the more benefits that they can offer to the drivers. Another thing about data is that it's just another way to ensure that the drivers are being safe. I don't have a problem with the data. I have a lot of drivers that actually have reassurance knowing that that data is on that vehicle, like cameras, onboard cameras. And God forbid, if an accident arises, you have someone else there, you have view, you can look, okay, this what happened. This driver had his hand 9 to 12. He would maintain the proper firearms.
Exactly.
He was looking 5 to 8, checking his mirrors. And it just, sometimes things happen. Maybe that driver cut him off. If that data wasn't there, now it's the problem, the driver's word and that person's word. And like, you always have to remember, like, the customer's always right. And a lot of times what happened, the company end up siding with the driver. They ready for to pay them off, and the driver, they can lose their job. And now that driver, he had to find another job. He had to think about his family. But meanwhile, the public sometimes get encouraged by this. They say, you know what? I'm a driver, not saying they try to get an accident, but stuff like that happens. It happens, and they put the driver. So anything that can back my story up and ensure that, okay, I was doing the right thing at the right time, I didn't cause accident, that make a driver happy.
That's a good point. And I want to segue now to my conversation with Mark Shaver. He's the Vice President of the National Transportation Institute based in Wisconsin.
Well, I came away with a lot, and I guess one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of are the inconsistencies with the schools, whether it's a carrier school or a school for truck drivers, or we call it a CDL mill, where they're just inconsistent with running the drivers in and not really preparing them for what the situation is. There was a lot of conversation on for-hire fleets and their aging workforce, and how some of the for-hire fleets may have to be nervous about that. And I'm not sure if that's really the proper take on that, only because with a for-hire driver, they don't necessarily like to do a lot of labor. private fleets, there is a lot of labor with the private fleet. And that's really the take that I have, is the schools and the private fleets are probably going to become more and more of partners. And with the millennials, we have to find a way to adapt better. And private fleets have adapted very, very well to a situation that merits a new millennial type driver to come into the system, because they're home daily, they have shorter length of haul, and it's a little more physical. They have more physical labor. Now, the drivers that are aging on the private side, will they go to the for-hire fleets? Maybe. There certainly is a good notion that could happen. So that is my take on that. And then, and I think that along with that, the people that I've spoken to aren't necessarily talking about raising their driver wages. What they are looking at, though, is how do they manage it better? How do they compare themselves to the competition and just benchmark it better?
Thank you, Mark Shaver. And also, again, a reminder, please send us your questions and feedback at share@ttnews.com. And we appreciate the questions that we have received. And the last point I want to get to, and this is something, Dave, that you really touched on early in the show, is regulations. Obviously, there's a myriad number of regulations at not only the federal level, but also the state level that affect how we transport goods in this country. Speaking to industry executives, people at trade groups and trade associations, not everybody's too fond of these government regulations. It's not only in transportation, but you see that in financial services industry and pharmaceutical industries writ large. And we're talking about electronic logging devices, the CSA scores, hours of service, the list goes on. Dave and Henry, what is the impact that regulations is having on the industry, especially from a recruitment and retention perspective?
Like, the positive thing about regulations are that they're geared towards safety, and we're all focused on improving safety. It just so happens that while they improve safety, they also impact driver recruitment and retention. And similar to the comments I made earlier, I think that the personal score that drivers have now weeds some drivers out of our industry. I think that electronic logs could cause some drivers to leave our industry as opposed to adapt to the new technology.
And then also we have the hair testing that will be coming in play, I believe, in a year. Henry, again, regulations, all these mandates and things that you have to always keep in mind when you're out there. Can you touch a little bit on that again?
Well, being that I am the wellness champion at my terminal, first thing I think about CSA. I think about the medical review boards. Yeah. And I think about there's drivers who been driving for years, but all of a sudden now they can't drive. I think Dave hit on it earlier about sleep apnea. Yeah. So if I'm a driver and I know my body and I snore a lot, now you telling me I'm not a safe driver because I snore, because I'm overweight and I snore, but I know my body. But they seem to think that because you snore and you're not getting the proper amount of rest that you can't drive trucks. So they have a lot of drivers who are overweight. They are, they're not allowed to drive anymore. And they also have, like, at first, when I first started driving, when this medical review board first started out, I was, like I said, I was a city driver. And then I became a line haul driver in 2005. Well, when they passed this law, I want to say in 2009, I was taking a sleep medicine and go to sleep during the day. Never had a problem, never had an accident or anything. But my doctor told me, say, Henry, you want to continue driving trucks, you can't take your sleep medicine anymore. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, I never had a problem, but you know what? I love what I do. I had to stop taking the medicine, for the continue to drive. Yeah. But they have some medication that some drivers had to take, so guess what? They had to leave our business.
And I think for a last point, and this is a combination. I'm just combining several questions because we got several questions on the e-logs. And Dave, maybe you can bring us home with an e-log perspective. And from the ATA point of view, what is, or which, if you, well, how are the e-logs affecting retention?
Well, I mean, I think the e-logs are all about safety.
Okay.
And that's why ATA supports that. At our company, we've run it for probably 6 years now, and we did it for that very reason, is we wanted to ensure that we knew the hours that our drivers were working, that we didn't have to worry about a driver that was exceeding the legal limits. We had auditors that would spend all their time trying to check behind logs to be sure that we caught anybody that was falsifying their log or not logging legally. This takes care of all that. It's real time. It's sort of falsification proof, and so we have a great deal of confidence the hours that our drivers are working on any given day. It's also given our operations people a view into the hours that a driver has available for the next day. So when they're putting a dispatch schedule together, they now know exactly what hours that driver has available to perform that work, and that's been very beneficial to our operation. So I think that the benefits certainly outweigh the risks. We did have a driver or two that decided to retire as opposed to fool with the new technology.
Okay.
But I'll tell you that today the drivers that are on it love it. And the worst thing that happens to us is when our system goes down and they have to revert back to a paper log.
Okay.
They pick up about 2.5 hours a week because of rounding. So paper logs are to the 15-minute mark. E-log is to the 1-minute mark. And so they must have been rounding up all the time because they've actually picked up some available hours in the week just due to the rounding. So our drivers really like it. As a management, we like it because we feel comfortable that we're compliant with the hours of service. And the hours of service are an adequate amount of time for a driver to work in a day or in a week, and we're comfortable with that.
Let's leave it there. We about cover a lot of ground, and I really think I want to thank everybody for their questions. And this is a to be continued issue, especially on the regulatory side. I know ATA and other stakeholders are working on Capitol Hill, and deliberating with the key lawmakers to address the concerns that the industry has out there. Again, I want to thank you for your insight and perspective. I'd like to also thank our guests, Dave Manning and Henry Bruster, and our sponsors, EBE Technologies and Conversion Interactive Agency, for making today's program possible. If you missed part of the show or just would like to watch it again, a replay will be posted shortly on our website, ttnews.com, and on liveonweb.ttnews.com. There you also will find links to our complete interviews with Rob Hatchett, Tim Norland, Leah Schultz, and Mark Shaver. Thank you also to our top-notch production team here at LiveOnWeb, Joe Terry, Kevin Eaton, Shihab Mustafa, Tara McClellan, and Gary Kaczynski. We'd like to hear your reaction to today's broadcast. Head over to our LinkedIn page and comment on this episode at ttn.ws/LOW is linked. And don't forget, LiveOnWeb also is available via podcast. Go to iTunes, search LiveOnWeb, and subscribe. Our next LiveOnWeb is on March 16th. Please tune in to catch my colleague Seth Clevenger, who will be hosting a panel that will offer insight and perspective and take your questions regarding the whole e-log mandate that takes effect December of next year. Until next time, I'm Eugene Mulero, congressional reporter at Transport Topics. Thank you for watching.